March 14th, 1953, 2:15 in the afternoon. A blind man named Clarence Blue Mitchell was sitting on a wooden stool at the corner of 135th Street and Lenox Avenue. He had his saxophone across his lap. A tin can sat on the sidewalk in front of him, half full of nickels and dimes. Clarence couldn't see the people walking past him, but he could feel Harlem. He could hear it. And for 11 years, Harlem had been his stage. Then a car pulled up, a long black Buick with New Jersey plates. 4 white men got out. They were drunk, they were loud, and they were looking for trouble. One of them walked straight up to Clarence, kicked over his tin can. Coins scattered across the sidewalk. Another one grabbed Clarence's saxophone and smashed it against a fire hydrant. The bell bent. The keys snapped off. 11 years of music, destroyed in 3 seconds. Then the biggest one leaned down, grabbed Clarence by the collar, and said something so ugly, so full of hate, that 3 women across the street started crying. Clarence didn't fight back. He couldn't. He was blind, 62 years old, and weighed maybe 140 pounds. He just sat there on that stool, bleeding from his lip, holding the broken pieces of his saxophone. The 4 men laughed, got back in their car, and drove away. They thought it was over. They thought they'd come into Harlem, humiliated an old black man, and gotten away with it. They had no idea that within 15 minutes, Bumpy Johnson would hear about what happened. And what Bumpy did in the next 4 hours didn't just punish those men. It sent a message that made the entire city shake. CTA. If stories like this hit different for you, go ahead and smash that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss a single one. Trust me, this one is going to blow your mind. To understand why what happened next shook the entire city, you need to understand who Bumpy Johnson was in 1953 and why attacking someone in his neighborhood was the worst mistake those 4 men would ever make in their lives. By 1953, Bumpy Johnson had been running Harlem for over 2 decades. He wasn't a mayor, he wasn't a politician. But if you lived in Harlem, Bumpy Johnson was the government. He was the law. He was the man you called when nobody else would help. See, the police didn't protect Harlem. Not really. If a black man got robbed, the cops would show up 3 hours later, write something on a notepad, and leave. If a black woman got harassed by someone outside the neighborhood, forget about it. Nobody was coming to help. The system wasn't built for them, and everyone in Harlem knew it. That's where Bumpy came in. Bumpy Johnson had built something that nobody in New York's underworld could figure out. He didn't just run the numbers racket. He didn't just have muscle on every corner. He had the people. Real people. Grandmothers loved him because he paid their rent when they were short. Shop owners respected him because he kept the thieves away. Kids looked up to him because he bought school supplies every September and handed out turkeys every Thanksgiving. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just the boss of Harlem. He was the heart of Harlem. And Bumpy had one rule that everyone knew. Everyone. You could be from downtown Manhattan. You could be from Brooklyn. You could be from another country. It didn't matter. The rule was simple. Bumpy. You don't come into Harlem and disrespect my people. This wasn't just words. People had tested this rule before. A group of Italian loan sharks had come up from the Lower East Side 2 years earlier, charging 300% interest to black families. Bumpy found out on a Monday. By Friday, every single one of those loan sharks had left Harlem and never came back. Nobody knew exactly what Bumpy said to them, but whatever it was, it worked. Another time, a white landlord who owned 6 buildings in Harlem refused to fix the heat in the middle of January. Families were freezing. Kids were getting sick. Bumpy paid the landlord a visit. The next morning, every boiler in every building was running. The landlord sold all 6 buildings within a month and moved to Connecticut. That was Bumpy's Harlem. Protected, respected, untouchable. Now you might be wondering, who were these 4 men who thought they could roll into Harlem and attack a blind man? Here's what we know. They were from Newark, New Jersey, construction workers. They'd been drinking at a bar in Midtown since noon. Someone dared one of them to drive through Harlem. It was supposed to be a joke, a dare, something to laugh about later. But when they saw Clarence sitting on that corner playing his saxophone, something ugly came out. The kind of ugly that lives inside small men when they think nobody is watching. The kind of ugly that makes them feel big by making someone else feel small. They didn't know who Clarence was. They didn't know that Clarence Blue Mitchell had been playing on that corner since 1942. They didn't know that Clarence had lost his sight in a factory accident and taught himself saxophone because music was the only thing left that made him feel alive. They didn't know that every single person on that block knew Clarence's name, loved his music, and considered him family. And they definitely didn't know that Clarence's corner was exactly 2 blocks from Bumpy Johnson's office above Small's Paradise Jazz Club. 2 blocks. That's how close those men were to the most dangerous man in New York City. And they had no idea. Within 10 minutes of the attack, a 14-year-old kid named Raymond ran into Bumpy's office, out of breath, eyes wide. Raymond. Mr. Johnson, they hurt Mr. Blue. 4 white men. They broke his horn and they hit him. They called him... Raymond couldn't even finish the sentence. He was shaking. Bumpy was sitting behind his desk, reading the newspaper. He set the paper down slowly. He took off his reading glasses and folded them carefully. Then he asked one question. Bumpy. Where is Clarence now? Raymond. Still on the corner, Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Patterson is helping him. He's bleeding. Bumpy stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He straightened his tie. And the look on his face, the people in that room would talk about it for years. It wasn't anger. Anger is loud. Anger is hot. This was something colder, something quieter, something much, much worse. Bumpy. Get me Illinois. Illinois Gordon was Bumpy's right hand. 6'2", built like a heavyweight fighter, and loyal to Bumpy since they were teenagers. When Bumpy said, "Get me Illinois," people moved fast, because it meant something was about to happen. While they waited for Illinois, Bumpy sent 2 of his men to Clarence's corner with instructions. Take Clarence to Dr. Weber on 139th Street. Pay for everything. Make sure he's comfortable. And find out everything Clarence heard. Every voice, every word, every detail. See, here's what those 4 men didn't understand. A blind man can't see your face, but a blind man who's been sitting on the same corner for 11 years can hear things most people miss. Clarence heard the car's engine. He heard it was big, American, maybe a Buick. He heard the New Jersey accents. He heard one of them call another one Eddie. And he heard them talking about a bar in Midtown, a place called Gallagher's, where they'd been drinking before they drove up. Bumpy had a name. Eddie. He had a location, Gallagher's in Midtown, and he had a car description. That was more than enough. Illinois arrived within 20 minutes. Bumpy laid it out for him. 4 men from New Jersey attacked Clarence, blind man, 62 years old. They broke his saxophone and put their hands on him. They used the worst word in the English language while they did it. Illinois' jaw tightened. He'd known Clarence for years. Everybody in Bumpy's circle knew Clarence. The old man played at block parties. He played at funerals. He played What a Wonderful World for Bumpy's wife on her birthday every year. Illinois. What do you need from me? Bumpy. Take 2 cars, take 8 men, find them, bring them back to Harlem. I want them standing in front of me by sundown. Illinois. And if they don't want to come? Bumpy looked at Illinois for a long moment. Bumpy. They'll come. Illinois Gordon didn't waste time. He took 8 men in 2 black Cadillacs and headed downtown. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Bumpy wanted those men by sundown. That gave him roughly 4 hours. First stop, Gallagher's Bar on 52nd Street in Midtown. Illinois walked in like he owned the place. He was wearing a tailored suit, gold cufflinks, and a look that said, "Don't ask questions, just answer mine." The bartender recognized the type immediately. This wasn't a customer. This was trouble. The good kind or the bad kind depended entirely on cooperation. Illinois. 4 construction workers from Jersey. One of them is called Eddie, big man. They were drinking here earlier today. Where'd they go? The bartender didn't hesitate. He'd seen the men earlier, loud, obnoxious, throwing around racial slurs like confetti. They'd talked about heading to another bar on 46th Street, a place called the Green Door, before driving back to Newark. Illinois and his men were at the Green Door within 12 minutes. And there they were, all four of them, sitting at a booth in the back, still drinking, still laughing, still bragging about what they'd done uptown. One of them was even doing an impression of Clarence, pretending to be blind, stumbling around with his arms out while the others howled with laughter. Illinois positioned four of his men at the exits, front door, back door, no way out. Then he walked up to the booth. The laughing stopped. Four drunk men looked up at Illinois Gordon, 6'2", 230 pounds, a face carved out of granite, and the color drained out of every single one of them. Illinois. "Which one of you is Eddie?" The biggest one, a thick-necked man with red hair and concrete dust on his boots, tried to act tough. "Eddie." "Who's asking?" "Illinois. Someone who watched you beat up a blind man today. All four of you are coming with me. Right now." "Eddie." "Like hell we are. You can't." Illinois didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He opened his jacket just enough for Eddie to see the .45 in his waistband. Then he leaned in close enough for only the four of them to hear. "Illinois. You can walk out that front door with me, get in the car, and take a ride uptown, or my 8 friends can carry you out the back door and nobody in this bar will ever remember seeing you. Your choice. You've got 5 seconds. Eddie looked at his 3 friends. His 3 friends looked at the 4 men standing at the exits. Big men. Serious men. Men who clearly did this kind of thing for a living. All 4 of them stood up. They rode uptown in silence. Not a word. 2 of them were shaking. One of them started praying under his breath. Eddie just stared straight ahead, his tough guy act completely gone, replaced by the look of a man who was starting to understand just how badly he'd miscalculated. Meanwhile, back in Harlem, Bumpy wasn't sitting around waiting. He was setting a stage. Because Bumpy Johnson never just punished people, he taught lessons, and the best lessons have an audience. Bumpy sent word through the neighborhood, tell everyone to come to the corner of 135th and Lenox at 5:30, the exact corner where Clarence had been attacked just 3 hours earlier. Tell them Bumpy Johnson has something to say. Within an hour, word had spread through barbershops, beauty parlors, churches, bars, and apartment buildings. By 5:00, people were already gathering. By 5:30, there were over 200 people standing on that corner, waiting. And Bumpy had done one more thing. He'd sent someone to a music shop on 125th Street with $200 in cash and a specific request. Buy the best saxophone in the store, brand new, top of the line. Have it waiting on Clarence's stool at 5:30. The stage was set. 5:47 p.m., the corner of 135th and Lenox Avenue. 200 people stood in a half circle on the sidewalk and into the street. Traffic had stopped. Nobody was honking. Clarence's wooden stool sat in the center, and on that stool was a brand new Selmer saxophone, gleaming gold in the late afternoon sun. Next to the stool stood Bumpy Johnson, wearing a charcoal gray suit and his trademark fedora. He looked calm. He always looked calm. Then the 2 black Cadillacs pulled up. Illinois got out first, then his men. Then, one by one, the 4 men from New Jersey were brought out of the cars. They weren't handcuffed. They weren't beaten. They were just terrified. You could see it in the way they walked. Short steps, hunched shoulders, eyes darting around at 200 faces staring at them with a hatred so pure you could practically feel it in the air. Bumpy watched them approach. He didn't say a word until all 4 of them were standing in front of him, close enough to touch. The crowd was silent, completely silent. 200 people, and you could hear pigeons on the rooftop across the street. Bumpy looked at each of them, one at a time, slowly. Then he spoke. "Bumpy, you came into my neighborhood today. You attacked a blind man, a 62-year-old blind man who never did anything to anyone. You broke his instrument. You put your hands on him, and you called him something I won't repeat." Eddie opened his mouth to say something. Bumpy raised one finger. Just one. Eddie's mouth closed. Bumpy, I'm not gonna hurt you. That's not what this is about. If I wanted you hurt, you'd already be in the hospital. Or worse. He paused. Let that sink in. Bumpy, this is about something you clearly don't understand. So let me educate you. Bumpy turned and gestured for someone in the crowd. Two of his men helped Clarence, Blue Mitchell, walk forward. He had a bandage on his lip. His hands were still trembling, but he was there, standing in front of the men who had attacked him. Bumpy, this man's name is Clarence Mitchell. He's been playing music on this corner for 11 years. He lost his sight working in a factory so people like you could have buildings to work in. He taught himself saxophone because it was the only way he could still give something beautiful to the world. Every person on this block knows his name. Every person on this block loves him. He's family. Bumpy stepped closer to Eddie, so close that Eddie could smell the cologne on Bumpy's suit. Bumpy, and you broke his horn and called him an animal. Eddie's legs were shaking. One of the other men had tears running down his face. He wasn't crying because he was sorry. He was crying because he was scared out of his mind. Bumpy, here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Clarence, not to me, to him. You're going to look at him, and I know he can't see you, but you're going to look at him anyway. And you're going to say his name and tell him you're sorry. All four of you. One at a time. Nobody moved. Bumpy, now. One word. 5 letters. And all four of them started moving. One by one, they stepped forward. One by one, they said Clarence's name. One by one, they apologized. Eddie went last. His voice cracked 3 times before he got the words out. Eddie, Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did to you. Clarence didn't say anything. He just nodded, slowly. Bumpy watched the whole thing. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to Eddie. Bumpy, that's a bill. $200 for the new saxophone. $50 for the doctor. $100 for Clarence's lost wages today. You're paying every penny. Right now. Eddie's hands were shaking so bad he could barely reach for his wallet. Between the 4 of them, they pulled together the money. Every dollar. Every cent. Bumpy took the money, walked over to Clarence, and pressed it into his hands. Then he picked up the new saxophone from the stool and placed it gently in Clarence's lap. Bumpy, this one's from Harlem, Blue. Play something for us. Clarence's trembling hands found the keys. He lifted the horn to his lips. And right there, on that corner, at 6 o'clock in the evening, with 200 people watching and 4 broken men standing in shame, Clarence Blue Mitchell played. He played Summertime. Slow, beautiful, heartbreaking. The notes floated over 135th Street like a prayer. Women were crying, men had their fists clenched, and Bumpy Johnson just stood there, hands behind his back, listening, with the smallest trace of a smile on his face. When the last note faded, 200 people erupted. Applause, cheers, tears. The sound echoed off every building on the block. Bumpy turned back to the 4 men. They looked like they'd aged 10 years in the last 30 minutes. Bumpy, now get out of my neighborhood. And if I ever hear about you coming back to Harlem, if I ever hear about you putting your hands on anyone who looks like me, you won't get an apology speech. You'll get something you won't walk away from. Do you understand? All 4 of them nodded. They practically ran back to their car. The Buick pulled away from the curb and disappeared down Lenox Avenue. They never came back. Not once. Not ever. Word of what happened that afternoon spread through New York like wildfire. By morning, every hustler from Boston to Baltimore had heard the story. Bumpy Johnson tracked down 4 racists who attacked a blind street musician, brought them back to Harlem, made them apologize in front of 200 people, and sent them running without laying a single finger on them. The story hit different because of how Bumpy handled it. He didn't beat those men. He didn't shoot them. He didn't send a message with blood. He sent a message with something far more powerful: dignity. He made them face the man they'd tried to break. He made them say his name. He made them see him as a human being, And then he gave Clarence a new horn and let the music speak for itself. The ripple effects were immediate. Other neighborhoods in New York started hearing about it. People who'd never set foot in Harlem suddenly understood why Bumpy Johnson was untouchable. It wasn't because of his guns or his money. It was because of his people. His people loved him. And a man who is loved by his community cannot be defeated. Clarence "Blue" Mitchell played on that same corner for another 9 years, until his health finally gave out in 1962. Nobody ever bothered him again. Not once. Because everybody in New York knew that corner belonged to Blue, and Blue belonged to Bumpy. 2 weeks after the incident, a reporter from the Amsterdam News asked Bumpy about what happened. Bumpy said only 7 words. Bumpy. Harlem takes care of its own. The story of Blue's saxophone became legend. People told it for decades. Mothers told their children. Barbers told their customers. Preachers mentioned it in sermons. It became more than a story about a gangster protecting a blind man. It became a story about respect, about community, about what happens when someone messes with the wrong neighborhood. Here's what Bumpy Johnson proved that day. Real power isn't about how many people fear you. It's about how many people you protect. It's about standing up for the ones who can't stand up for themselves. It's about making sure that nobody, and I mean nobody, comes into your world and hurts your people without answering for it. Those 4 men walked into Harlem thinking they were untouchable. They drove out knowing the truth. In Harlem, there was one man you didn't cross. Not because he'd kill you, but because he'd make you face what you'd done. And that was worse. Bumpy Johnson didn't need a gun that day. He needed a saxophone. And that's why he was the king. CTA. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe right now. We're dropping Bumpy Johnson stories every single week, and they only get crazier from here. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you think Bumpy should have gone harder on those men, or was the public apology the perfect move? And turn on notifications because next time we're telling the story of how Bumpy Johnson walked into a room full of armed Italian mobsters with nothing but a dinner fork and walked out with control of the entire Harlem waterfront. You do not want to miss that. Remember, in Harlem, respect wasn't given, it was earned. And Bumpy Johnson earned his every single day.